We begin with the biggest story in college football right now, which was on Friday afternoon. It was made official that Sherrone Moore will take over the Michigan football program after serving as offensive coordinator for the Wolverines and an interim head coach for 4 different games, including those consequential wins against Penn State and Ohio State at the end of the year. Lots to get to that we're going to try to tackle here, especially the staff. I mentioned that breaking news. We're starting to get a better idea of what that staff might look like, who's going with Harbaugh to Los Angeles to join the Chargers. Big decisions ahead for Moore. But Danny, just in terms of the big picture of it all, it seemed obvious, right? But where are you with Michigan's decision to promote Moore? What do you think it says about either Moore or the Wolverines football program where it's at right now?
It made sense, right? It just seemed all too easy. I think the criticism would have been on Ward Manuel if he had gone outside, like you open up yourself to, losing a mass, exodus of players. I think from that standpoint, if you just watch what happened to Bama, it's Bama and they had players leaving, good quality players. You're probably thinking, that could be us too. But also, just all of it, life is about timing. Chiron Moore had 4 games as an interim coach, which were essentially could have looked at him as a, on the job interview process that he was going through. No one else gets that luxury, that isn't hired from within. So when Harbaugh goes and you've got multiple players, Zach Zinter telling Ward Manuel, that's our guy, players vocal about it, I think you did run the risk of losing a lot of players had you gone outside. So it just seemed like, I don't want to say easy because that seems like it diminishes it, but I think it was the most commonsensical move that you could see for Michigan. I think it was a pretty easy move for Ward Manuel.
They should know. They've had how much exposure to Chiron Moore? A ton. He even has head coach experience.
Right? Like he comes over in 2018. Am I right about that?
You promoted him every step of the way. He was originally the tight ends coach. Then he became the offensive line coach. Then he became the O-line coach / OC. He's the guy Harbaugh recommended. I think if they had not promoted Chiron Moore, we would be having the conversation like, ooh, wait, what do they know that we don't? Right now, just because they have superior information on Moore doesn't mean he's going to work out. But it was the obvious choice because he had done a really good job there in all of the roles that he had. It's a bit of a risk because I don't think he would have got another major job, like not a Purdue like he was in the running for last year, but if Bama opened or if like an LSU opened or something like that, he wouldn't get mentioned. But again, those schools don't have the information edge because he was not an employee of theirs. They should know. And I think that sort of gives me confidence that it will work out.
Yeah. It made all the sense. It didn't really, I felt like conducting a coaching search at this point would have probably been silly because it's not like, I don't know if Saban told anybody at Alabama his plans before he retired. Like maybe they were kind of caught off guard by it just as much as anybody else. I don't think he would do that. Like I think he would probably let the AD know and they kept it quiet. But it's not like anybody was caught by surprise in Ann Arbor about Jim Harbaugh leaving for an NFL job. We've been talking about it on this show for 3 or 4 years, the possibility of it happening, the fact that they had the contract on the table. It was never agreed to. They were putting the clause in there that says you can't take an NFL job for at least whatever year. Like Jim has not been, he's had 1,000 chances to say, nah, I'm not leaving for the NFL. And he never did. So like you kind of understood what was going on. So, yeah, like the suspensions this year, giving Chiron Moore the chance to be the interim coach and be there on game day and run the operation, even if Jim was around during the week, that gives you information on him. Being in the building every day, like you're saying, but that gives you information on him. It's clear the players like him. It's clear that he's a good coach. And also, like, was he a co-OC with Gaddis at one point? Mm-hmm. Or was Gaddis the OC? Yeah, and Gaddis won the Broyles, and then he was gone. Like Moore it wasn't Moore who was gone. It was Gaddis who was gone. So that kind of gives you a feel of how the rest of the coaching staff maybe felt about it. And then if you listen to what Jim Harbaugh said about the hire over the weekend too, it's clear Jim Harbaugh thinks he was the guy that they should replace him with. So yeah, I don't think it doesn't mean it's going to work out. It just means that this was the no duh hire for them right now.
Do you remember when Gaddis won the Broyles Award? He had gotten the play calling duties like taken away from him.
Yeah.
Which was kind of crazy because he wins this award. And I think it went to more Harbaugh, Chiron Moore. But Gaddis had, I guess, because he was newer, I guess that was what it was about. But I
Well,
remember
because he'd been taken from Alabama. Like that was
right.
There was a narrative about him as a rising star where it was like Harbaugh had, taken him from Alabama. And then, the narrative continued with, and Miami backed up the truck and got him out of Ann Arbor. And now he's on Loxley's staff at Maryland. So different. You mentioned Tom, doesn't know if it's going to work. I think it gives them a pretty good chance of maintaining. I don't know if they're going to be winning the Big Ten for a fourth year in a row. It's not going to be my prediction, but there is something about the way this roster has been constructed, the way that the team itself likes to handle its business, that in promoting Sherrone Moore, and y'all see his new little moniker, Smash. It's like it started as something when he was just coaching up the offensive line, and he said then the whole offense took it as an identity, and now this is going to be like his charge to the Wolverines team that he is taking over. I loved that Chiron Moore said, "I'm not going to be Jim Harbaugh." And that was a very clear message from the press conference on Saturday. I'm going to try to put my spin on it. And his spin as the former offensive line coach who has built up a Big Ten champion and national champion that wins at the line of scrimmage, like Smash. Like, you know what? That would not have worked. Like, hey, we're going to bring in an air raid coach, right? Like we're
Flash. Dash.
We're going to go take one of these hot offensive coordinators and let him take over this Michigan roster that has been built and developed to win at the line of scrimmage. So long-term picture, 8, 9, 10 years down the line, I have no idea. But I do think promoting Chiron Moore gives Michigan the best chance to maintain everything that they have gained in their climb to the top of college football. It'll be very difficult to win a national championship again. They're losing a ton of super important guys and super important coaches, but I like it for that reason. You've gotten to this level. Don't try to all of a sudden go in a different direction. This helps you keep the identity of the program moving forward.
Is your opinion of Michigan in 2024 significantly different if Harbaugh had remained the coach?
No.
Not if the same players that left. Like if JJ McCarthy's gone, no.
That's
if JJ McCarthy comes back for another year with Jim Harbaugh, yes.
When we did our way too early top 25, Tom threw Michigan at 5, but then he tacked on, and if Harbaugh's not there, it might go down a few spots. But like, Tom, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's not like you're dropping them outside of a top 10.
Oh, I'm dropping them out of the top 50 now. Yeah, right. I move them down to like 7 or 8.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's going to be interesting to judge this as a success after the first year because I don't think there's any way it can replicate what Harbaugh did the last 3 years. I mean, it's going to get harder because Ohio State just boosted up their whole roster. It's going to get harder because you have Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA coming. It's going to continue to get harder as we still try to navigate through NIL. Like everything got harder. So like Harbaugh, I don't think this was what it was about, but I do think him and Saban leaving at the same time made their decisions a lot easier because of all that.
You ready to get into it?
Are you guys seeing all the stuff in the chat of like Ward Manuel botched this? He didn't agree to the closet. Guys, Harbaugh has clearly wanted to leave Michigan and go to the NFL for many years in a row. Like the Vikings wouldn't hire him. He didn't turn down the Vikings. They told him no. So I think I'm not saying that Ward Manuel is some amazing athletic director. I don't know the guy. The track record is fine. But I don't think there's anything he could have done to get Jim Harbaugh to stay, right?
I think he's catching this is psychoanalyzing a fan base, which is a horrible idea. But I think he is catching the sadness and the mad and the negative energy of just like Jim Harbaugh's gone because they can't blame the guy who just won him a national championship, right? And so you blame the athletic director for not being able to hold it down as though he ever really had a chance in the first place when, according to all the reporting, they bent on everything that Harbaugh and his team or camp were asking for contractually.
There was the last report that Detroit, I think it was the Detroit Free Press put out that said they finally caved on some of the NCAA concessions, but it was too late. Like Harbaugh was gone. So that's what the people are people that want to think Ward Manuel screwed this up are going to latch onto that. And look, if it doesn't work out with Chiron Moore and Harbaugh crushes it with the Chargers, I think Ward Manuel probably takes a brunt of the criticism.
All right, so let's get to the staff side of this. It is the most interesting and also the most urgent, as there are reports coming out of Ann Arbor this morning in terms of other names that might be joining Jim Harbaugh in the NFL. So I've got a list. I've got them sorted into gone, probably gone, possibly gone, and unknown. I want to test all this because this morning we get reports that Ben Herbert, strength and conditioning coach, is gone. Jesse Minter's gone, right?
Gone.
Rick Minter, probably. Jesse's dad. He was the linebackers coach. Like, I don't
Probably, but you don't know for sure.
You don't know for sure. But I know you were discussing Herbert this morning heading into the show. Does that feel as significant as Minter?
It does to me, because so much of your culture, I think, and how you work as a program is top down from the strength coach, because he's the guy that spends the most time with you, throughout the off season and really kind of establishing that culture and your identity as a team. So he was really an extension of Jim Harbaugh. It'll be interesting to see who Sherrone Moore picks. And I'm not going to tell you I know like how to evaluate who the strength coach is and whatnot, unless just somebody in the industry said, hey, this guy's a real dude. He's really important to us. But I mean, Herbert is a guy who was really, really praised throughout the industry, and they made some big gains, gains in strength and conditioning when he got hired there. So my guess here is that they will like try to get continuity from within the existing program and not blow it up, unless Sherrone has some contact outside. But look, Herbert's a name, so we'll see if you can maintain a lot. Like, I don't know what, 10, 15 years ago, everybody picked off the Tommy Moffitt tree at LSU, right? Everybody, Saban had to have a Tommy Moffitt guy and run kind of that hatch system that he was running, right? And Jimbo got Valoria and Saban got when he went to Bama. Moffitt didn't come to Bama; he stayed at LSU, so he got Scott Cochran and Pruitt took his guy from there. So maybe Herbert has a tree that'll be really successful as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be Justin Tress. That's what the report that I saw was, which is the assistant strength coach. Herbert's right-hand man. So
I don't know a damn thing about him other than that.
Neither do I. Here's what I know about him. He's the assistant for Herbert in Michigan strength program. So, and that's really as far as any of us can really know going into strength coaches. But I will say, like, if you're promoting the guy from within, at least he's familiar with what you've been doing. And it's not like you're just bringing in somebody from the outside without any familiarity with what's been going on in that locker room or how you do things. So, like, strength coach is a huge hire. It is always going to be an important hire. And I think continuity there is probably better than completely starting over, unless, like you're saying, you've just got somebody who you're like, oh, he's going to do a great job. He just hasn't gotten a chance yet. So I think this is one of those things where, like, kind of, again, what Chip was doing, not to psychoanalyze an entire fan base, but I think with Harbaugh leaving, there's just, there's kind of the uncertainty and concern. And then it's like things kind of snowball where Herbert's following him to LA, Minter's following him to LA. So like these things all come in quick succession. And as a fan, you kind of start to panic a little bit. I think Ben Herbert's a tremendous strength coach. I think the results speak for themselves. If you look at what they've brought in, what they've developed, and what they've sent out. I don't think he's irreplaceable. Like, I think that there is a certain kind of style of strength coaching. There are certain strategies that they use and methods that they use that have proven effective. Like, Illinois strength coach came from the Ben Herbert tree at Michigan. He's done very good for Illinois. I don't think it's like some sort of secret ingredient in a recipe kind of situation. It's just a process. And if you learn that process, it can work out. And I think that some of this is just overreaction from Michigan fans who kind of have some sky is falling vibes.
I'll say this. I do think it's a really important position. Like stating, I know we've had this conversation before. I think that's one of the biggest areas that the game has changed in the last 30 years, like since I've been out. Before, it was kind of just a guy who, probably had his routines and stuff laid out. But as like science has evolved and workout regimens have evolved and nutrition has evolved and when you work out, I think it is a really big hire. I will say too, energy is something like that strength coaches typically, like motivators. They're the guys that typically are very positive. They're always on you. They're yelling at you because I would say of the team, there's probably only like 20% that really enjoys working out, maybe 30%, but the other 60, 70%, you got to get them working out. And it's kind of a unique trait that you can get, that you have to have. So it is an important hire. Like, I don't want to diminish that.
No, and the connection with the team. So many coaches will tell us that, like, I go to my strength coach to know what's going on with these guys because they spend so much time around them when it comes to getting the pulse, figuring out how to motivate them properly to get them ready for game days and to practice right. Then that's a huge part of it. So Sherrone Moore's press conference, again, news broke on Friday late afternoon. Saturday was the press conference, and in attendance at the press conference was quarterbacks coach Kirk Campbell, wide receivers coach Ron Bellamy, special teams coordinator Jay Harbaugh, tight ends coach Grant Newsome, and defensive line coach Mike Elston. Tom, of that group, how many do you think are in the projection for what the staff might look like under Chiron Moore?
Jay Harbaugh's gone.
Right. And I think Elston might be too.
Elston might be too. I think a couple of guys you mentioned are in line for promotion to OC and maybe DC. But there's a name you didn't mention that wasn't there.
Mike Hart.
Uh-huh.
Steve Clinkscale, defensive backs coach and co-defensive coordinator, and Mike Hart, running backs coach, were not there in this list of coaches we have discussed. Their absence, yes, was noted.
And Mike Hart has been kind of vocal about how he thinks he can be a head coach and he wants to be a head coach. And he didn't even get interviewed or talked to about this once Harbaugh left. It was Sherrone Moore was the only person on staff that even had the quote unquote interview for this. So I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Hart's following Harbaugh to the NFL or if he's looking for a job elsewhere at this point. But I do think on the offensive side of the ball, you'll probably see some internal promotion. I think that the DC is the one job that is kind of up in the air because you've lost, now you've lost your second coordinator in 3 or 4 years. Both came from the Ravens kind of background. What I want to know is, do you keep going back to that tree if you can? Because that has been very effective for you. You've got a lot of players returning on defense, and at least that way, schematically, you're not changing things up on them. But at the same time, part of the reason you went to that tree was because, as we've seen, it's a really good defensive scheme for slowing down offenses like Ohio State. The reason I think that Mike McDonald is going to be the head coach in Seattle for the NFL after, in the next week or so, is because they want somebody there who can stop San Francisco, who can stop the Rams, who can stop the Cardinals offenses. But now Ohio State, they're changing their offense. They're going to a power rushing attack with a mobile QB and 2 battering ram running backs. So it's going to be interesting to see what decision they make on that side of the ball. If they want to do because again, Michigan pretty much revamped its defense in a way to stop Ohio State. Is Sherrone Moore going to make his defensive coordinator position designed just to stop Ohio State, or is he just going to get somebody he thinks is the best coach for the job and just can coordinate a good defense with the talent that they have? That's going to be an interesting thing for me to follow.
I would not make my defensive coordinator hire based on what looks to be a 1-year potential change in the offense for Ohio State. If you look at who Ohio State is recruiting at quarterbacks, they're recruiting throwers.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Julian Sand or Aaron Noland are elite level runners. Those guys are throwers, and they just, signed Jeremiah Smith, one of the highest rated receiver recruits we've ever seen. So, and a bunch of guys last year as well. So I would not, in a year where I'm not totally sure that it matters who you hire at DC, you're going to be the underdog in that game. Doesn't mean you can't win it, but you will be the dog. I'm not making my coordinator hire based on that, because long term, they're still going to run Ryan Day's offense. I just think this was the most advantageous quarterback that you could probably go get with what they had and not wanting to upset the room. You kind of needed a 1-year guy.
Well, so what do you think? What are the big question marks, Bud? What names are you looking, and how do you tell a Michigan fan either it's going to be okay or pay attention to this guy because this really matters? The Elston one seems he's a defensive line coach, he's a recruiting coordinator, he's somebody with a lot of great connections to Michigan. I could see him staying, and him staying I think would be a big win for Sherrone Moore in the assistant coaching carousel. I would say if you keep him on board, that's an important thing. You think about the way these defensive lines have played, the way they've been developed, phenomenal if you're able to have that as a piece to be able to build moving forward. However, according to 24/7 Sports, Minter and Jim Harbaugh, quote, love Elston, and there could be some offers that come with him being able to join the traveling caravan. So that's the only one that I would offer for the purposes of conversation that I'm really keeping my eyes on. The rest is I'm just going to trust the process and Sherrone Moore to play out.
I mean, I think Elston. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say Elston's going to get paid either way.
Do you think there's any chance he would consider Jim Leonard if they went outside?
Yeah. I don't know if there's like a connection there, but
I don't think there is. But other than he was at Big Ten and he's still in the Big Ten.
I think honestly, Sherrone's if they don't go to the Ravens tree, he's likely to hire somebody he has previous connections to, somebody like Clint Hurt.
That's a name that's also come up. Very interesting because they worked together.
Louisville,
Charlie Strong staff, right? Interesting.
Hell, maybe it'll be Charlie Strong.
Danny, any other burning questions before we hit the break and keep it moving with the Sherrone Moore era? What's fair for Sherrone Moore? Does he need to have X number of Big Ten championships or Y number of playoff appearances in 3 years or 5 years? Like let's throw something out there that we can clip and then come back and judge 2 years down the line.
If Chiron Moore doesn't win 3 consecutive national titles, his entire tenure is a failure. One thing we haven't touched on, though, that I'd like to bring up.
Sure.
And Bud, this I think will be interesting. I'm interested to see if anything changes in the recruiting approach. Because if you'll like what we talked about it last week, like when Jim showed up, there were the satellite camps. There was the sleeping over at people's houses, hanging out, climbing trees, all that kind of stuff. Jim was really involved in the recruiting because he was trying to get things going. But the last few years, like they had top 5 classes or top 10 classes the first few years he was there. Last couple of years, that's dropped off a little bit. They've been getting good classes, but they've been more developing them than anything. But Sherrone Moore was one of their better recruiters. I'm wondering if now that he's in the head coach role, you're going to see more of an active approach from the head coach in recruiting and to see if maybe they might start competing for some better, more top 5 kind of classes again.
So there is always a worry when you take one of your best recruiters and you make them the head coach, because head coaches by rule are not allowed to spend as many days on the road. They have more limited communication. It's basically all the head coaches don't really want to work as much. And so they all get together and they pass these rules like, all right, we're banning ourselves from this, right? Like last night, my wife kind of like, we're on the same level. She's like, all right, Daddy, you're in a timeout. Go eat your dinner. I was like, thank God. Okay. Cause like, I am beat from wrestling these kids like crazy. And so the counter to that, though, is that when you see a really good recruiter as an assistant get elevated, what makes them a good recruiter is oftentimes that like dogged relentlessness, and they demand that of their staff. Like Kirby works his guys really hard. Mario works his guys really hard in recruiting. Like they grind on you and they demand that same level of effort and execution on the recruiting trail. So, if you're a Michigan assistant, maybe that's coming, right? Like, is Michigan going to put in more effort and hey, like we have to elevate the recruiting here, possibly. Now, the other aspect is something we've said on this show before, and some Michigan fans gave us some blowback for it, but I bet you they're not going to do it now. Recruits, I do think, have in the back of their mind, hey, Jim Harbaugh might be leaving for the NFL because he openly courted NFL jobs for almost a half decade, right? I don't think Chiron Moore is going anywhere anytime soon. And if he does a good job, I think recruits will have a little more certainty that he's going to be there if he does a good job. Obviously, if he doesn't do a good job, how long do they give him? But we'll see.
I mean, his first year, we've looked at the schedule, right? Texas, USC, at Washington, which I know might not be as tough, Oregon, and then on the road at Ohio State. Good luck.
All right, so here's what I got. Sherrone Moore has signed a 5-year contract worth approximately $6 million a year with bonuses paid out for Big Ten championship, college football playoff appearances, national championships, and the like. It could go up a couple more million if they were to hit all of those different contract escalators. If you're Sherrone Moore, I think you cannot go into year 5 without a playoff appearance.
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay, so
let's better not go into year 2 without a playoff appearance. There's 12 teams getting in.
No.
9-3 we think is getting in, then yeah.
Oh, you better be getting into the playoffs in the first couple of years.
Let me back it up. Sherrone Moore needs a playoff appearance to get to year 4.
It's on the cusp. It's right there. But yes.
If they finish year 3 without reaching the playoff, they might make a move.
Is it a close, like, I mean, it's very difficult to foresee that happening without them also having years like outside of the top 25.
Yeah.
Right? Like, are you finishing 13th, 14th consistently and just narrowly missing? I don't think Michigan is the type of school that traditionally would get rid of somebody if you have 3 consecutive top 15 finishes. However, that is a very like narrow window that you're just missing it by a gnat's ass and not, you know what I'm saying? So I would say, without knowing the exact finishes, I would say, yeah, if you don't make a college football playoff in your first 3 years in a 12-team format,
okay,
yeah,
You should be making the playoff next year.
possibly. I mean,
I don't think that's like. I mean, Danny just read the schedule.
Yeah, I don't think.
I'm not scared of USC if I'm Michigan. I'm not scared of Washington if I'm Michigan. You just beat Washington when they were good.
Are you afraid of Ohio
Texas?
State?
Texas is a
Oregon?
problem. Ohio State will be a problem. Oregon,
Well,
yeah, but that's 9-3.
Let's play this game then, because I saw Magadow over the weekend, who's crushing it, making all these social videos for us, and he's like, "What do you think their win total will be?" And he thought it'd be 8. And I thought it'd be higher. I was more of like the probably 9.
It'll be 9.
Juice under.
8.5.
Maybe 8.5. Heavy juice over.
They're losing a lot too. Not only, I mean,
They've
we
also got their entire defense coming back. And that team, nobody was talking about how great Michigan was because its offense was phenomenal. Like, the big question we had all about, well, can they score points against Washington if they get into that? Can they keep up? Can they outscore Ohio State? That defense is back. They've got their entire defensive line back. They've got both their safeties. They've got one of the best corners in the country. They're going to be fine. I think we're kind of panicking a bit too much.
They should be. The one thing I noticed about their schedule is that there are 3 games that are legitimate toss-ups, and they're probably a dog at least once at home, either to Oregon or Texas or both, and they will be a dog at Ohio State.
They're not going to be a dog at home.
You don't think they'll be a dog at Texas or Oregon?
Maybe to Texas early in the year. I don't think by the time they play.
All right, like a slight dog. Let's just call them 2 tosses, and you're probably what, 5 points at Ohio State?
Michigan's not going to be an underdog at home unless the bottom falls out. They're not going to be an underdog at home to Oregon.
All right, who wins more games next season, Alabama or Michigan?
Ooh.
Alabama's probably got the easier schedule, doesn't it?
They're probably going to be about the same.
Yeah.
Alabama's win total at FanDuel Sportsbook, make every moment more, is 9.5, with the over at -106 and the under at -122. Again, Alabama's win total is at 9.5. Tom, did you say 9 was what you think it'll be? And then let the market decide the prices?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I don't know. Like, I think we can agree that they're coin flips in terms of Michigan, Ohio State ish, but I mean, like, I can't get to where I'm making Michigan right now with these rosters a favorite at home over Texas.
Give me Michigan as a dog. Come on, let's go.
It'd probably be like Michigan 1, Michigan 2.
Yeah.
You know.
By the way, Chip, what you said when you gave the contract details, I think that's another reason why it made sense.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the buyout's reasonable. It's not breaking the bank. A lot of incentives. If they would have gone outside, that would not have been the case. So I think it made it a really easy, common sense decision.
The point I was kind of thinking about making and did a really clumsy job of making is that there's no sort of middle ground opponent here for Michigan. Like, I see 3 games that are quite losable. And then I do see probably 8 games, maybe 7 games where they should just physically overwhelm the opponent.
Right. They should be able to
Fresno can't block them. Arkansas State can't block them.
Yeah.
Minnesota can't block them. Washington lost everybody, so I'm going to throw in the Washington can't block them. Illinois could be kind of tricky if Illinois can score and their offensive line is much better. Michigan State, again, probably not in year 1, although I do expect they're better. USC, we'll see. USC definitely offensive line.
USC will not block them.
I don't know about that. Indiana, Northwestern. So that, like, Michigan probably plays 3 top 10 opponents.
Yes.
And I don't think they play anybody else who is a top 15 level team.
Give me Michigan with more wins than Alabama.
think I'll take Alabama until I see Michigan's quarterback situation.
Yeah,
Even though I'm not a big Milroe guy, I have more confidence in him than Orgy at this point.
Yeah, the Chipolytics love when you're able to get to 7 and 8 on the surefire wins, and then you just give them half the toss-ups. I think they could flirt with 9-10.
Well, quarterback's going to be huge here. Like, what is Michigan going to do with QB this year?
Well, I'll tell you.
Orgy out?
Well, I'll tell you what. I seen Chiron Moore as an acting head coach run the ball 30 times in a row, and I seen Chiron Moore as an acting head coach have to deal with an offense where J.J. McCarthy could put, my eyes, not reporting, 0 weight on his plant leg against Maryland and still be able to put together game plans to go and win football games. So, yeah, I think he can figure it out one way or another.